What's going on, everybody? How's it going? Thanks again for joining me for another We Are So Back Wednesday, another BGcast Wednesday live podcast. I'm sure you guys noticed something different tonight. I'm not wearing a hat. That's because I actually got a haircut that I like. It's kind of bizarre. I went and actually dealt with somebody who cuts my kind of hair. You know, you guys have always heard me say that I have wavy blonde hair that is completely wild and it doesn't behave itself. But now you can see my head right now, and you know that I was not lying. I know some of you probably out there thought I was bald and trying to cover it up. Nope, I hate to burst your bubble. I am not bald. But no, this is a beanie-less show. We are going to be rocking it with the hair out. But nonetheless, I want to show everybody something before we get to my guest real quick. And this is going to kind of be the premise of what this show is going to be all about. So I'm going to pull up a photo and we're going to go over it real quick before I bring my guest on. And this is the kind of stuff we're going to be talking about tonight. This is the kind of stuff we're going to be outing and we're going to be exposing tonight. Because when I show you this photo, I think you guys are going to get your eyes opened to some of the really messed up stuff that's going on in our healthcare system at this point in time. You guys know how I feel about our healthcare system. I have been very vocal about it. And this is just kind of the icing on the cake. So let's bring it up here. So we have parents of kids with medulloblastoma. This is the cancer that we're going to be talking about tonight, especially in this individual story, who is a good friend of mine. We've been talking for a while, and I'm really happy she has decided to do this show because I really think this needs to get out there. So we have my poor sweet Lydia, died cancer-free, but died from the chemo-related issues. They pushed for chemo after months of free scans. Her third cycle killed her. They didn't give her time to heal between cycles. Pushed, I'm going to say pushed and made us feel like we had to do chemo or she could die. Instead, she died of infection, neutropenic sepsis shock or septic shock. That's what I'm getting from that. So this is kind of what we're going to be diving into tonight, guys. So let me bring on my guest. I'm going to refer to her as Joey. And we are going to listen to a little bit of Joey's story and what she's been going through over the course of, I'm going to say at least almost a year now, she's been going through this at this point. And it's been an interesting ride. It's been a lot of challenges. From the looks of it, she's at the light of the end of the tunnel right now. And, she's been very strong through this whole ordeal, dealing with these corrupt oncologists, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate the comment on the haircut. These corrupt oncologists, this revolving door that the healthcare and the legal system has. I'm not going to take up any more time. Let's bring her on. I have my friend Joey here with me tonight. Joey, what's going on? Thank you for joining us here on BGcast tonight. And thank you for being so brave and strong and coming on to tell your story.
Thank you. Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for having me on. I am taking a big risk giving this story out. As you know, I've kind of been somewhat gag ordered not to speak about this, which I think is very unconstitutional. It's against my First Amendment right to free speech. So I'm kind of putting myself out there with this one.
I completely understand. I completely understand. And I've been hearing, oh, you're already getting love. We got Christine V in the chat giving
Hi,
out some
Christine.
love. So yeah. No, of course. So Joey, let's kind of start off from the beginning. Let's start off with how this whole situation started to develop and manifest in your life. Again, I'm not, I can't even imagine what you've been through and how strong you've been to come out the other side and to have to have the strength to come on and not only tell your story, but everything you've been through, everything we've talked about. Like, I just want to give you the utmost props for still standing and still overcoming this. So why don't we kind of start from the beginning? Let's kind of get like a play-by-play on how this all went down. Sure. And some of what you've been going through in this as well, and a lot of what you've been experiencing.
Okay, so I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm going to refer to the patient as Jay, just for legal purposes. So basically, Jay was diagnosed. Well, first of all, he started having some symptoms where he was getting nauseous and throwing up a lot. I kept bringing him to doctors and they kept downplaying everything. I'm a pretty intuitive person. This may sound strange to some of you out there, but I had an intuitive message come through that I had to cancel an upcoming trip to Peru because something was seriously wrong with my son. And so you tell a doctor that, they think you're a little crazy, but his doctors weren't listening. They sent him, told me it was just like a virus and a stomach bug, and he was going to be fine. But my mom intuition said otherwise. I actually had to switch doctors after 3 months of attempting to get my son a CAT scan, switch doctors. And I just told this woman, look, he needs a CAT scan. Like, I've got this premonition. If I'm getting this, like, something's seriously wrong with my son. So she trusted me on that. She's like, if that's what your mom gut's telling you, I'm going to order a CAT scan, but it's going to take a couple of weeks. I said, no, we don't have a couple of weeks. So I told her, just back me if I go to the ER. If they refuse to give him a CAT scan, you're going to have to back me. So she agreed to do that. And essentially, I brought him in for a CAT scan. And right from the start, this was just crazy because the doctor didn't want to do the CAT scan at the emergency room. He had just been diagnosed with Lyme disease. Lyme disease can really mimic some of the symptoms of what he was ultimately diagnosed with, which I'll get to. So you could see how they were a little bit hesitant. So they thought the Lyme disease had spread into his spinal cord. But I just like knew something was really off. So I said, no, he got to have that CAT scan. So they take him in for the CAT scan. And I thought this was a little insensitive. The doctor at the emergency room comes back in the room and in front of my son, and she tells us, which she should have brought us out of the room. You don't tell a parent in front of their child, and especially at his age. The child was 10 years old at the time. And she says, he has a 6.4 centimeter brain tumor, and he's going to have to be emergency transported to the bigger hospital that deals with this type of stuff. I'm not going to mention that hospital's name right now, just for legal purposes. But essentially, they had to emergency transport my son. And it was a bit insensitive, and I pulled her out to the hallway and told her, you don't do something like that. What do you think's going to happen when you tell a parent that their son has a 6.4 centimeter brain tumor? You can't help but break down and cry over something like that. Now your child's upset because he's seeing his parents in distress. But that's kind of how it started. He was rushed to the larger hospital, a children's hospital, and essentially had to be rushed into an 8-hour brain surgery. And 6 days after that brain surgery, come to find out he was diagnosed with a rare aggressive brain cancer called medulloblastoma. About 3 to 500 kids are diagnosed with this every single year, so it's pretty rare. So we were originally told he would not walk, he would not talk, he would have complete mutism for months. The surgeon at that hospital was absolutely amazing. Okay. She was able to remove the entire tumor. And as soon as he came out of surgery, the first thing he said was mom. And he was able to speak full sentences. It did take him a while to be able to lift his head and to be able to walk around. But all of that, came with time, and he recovered pretty quickly as far as like his mobility and being able to walk again. Not to 100% capacity what he was before, but at least he was able to speak and talk. And I think a lot of people that follow my Facebook page saw some of the videos of him right after surgery. So if you go to Joey Sky, some of those are public and you can watch some of his recovery on there. So that was basically the start. So when they first removed the tumor, we still didn't know it was cancerous. On September 12th, I got the diagnosis that it was indeed a medulloblastoma, but they did let us know that the entire tumor was removed. So he was cancer free, no cancer. They did check his spinal cord. This type of cancer does potentially spread into the spinal cord. but he had zero evidence of any spread in the spinal cord, no spread to any other parts of the brain. This just affects the cerebellum of the brain.
Mhm.
Another crazy thing that happened the day that he was diagnosed, they literally told, and this is 6 days after his brain surgery, I was told that my son needed to be put on an antidepressant psych med.
Wait,
It's
wait,
like,
what? So that's strange to me. I just gotta say something. Why?
it
Like that.
doesn't make any logical sense. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? My kid is like recovering from brain surgery right now. He can't even lift his head up. How are you diagnosing this child with depression? Like, doesn't make any logical sense. But here they were trying to put my son on an antidepressant 6 days out of brain surgery. I'm like, you don't even know how his brain is functioning yet you want to now give a 10-year-old a psych medicine that's going to alter his brain chemistry for life. Not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And they were like, well, all of these kids get depressed and they need antidepressants. And I was
What?
like, well, my son is not depressed. He's just going through a very challenging time right now. And you haven't even been able to assess him for depression. Why are you even bringing this up? This shouldn't even be a conversation right now. So that was like my first red flag right from the start.
I can understand how that would be a red flag for you because, you know, you're looking at somebody who just, I mean, your son who obviously this whole situation already had his brain chemistry altered to some degree because, I mean, especially of what he had, and everything that was
Yeah,
going on. And you would think, as even in the medical field, that you would want to let the brain recover from what just happened to it before
absolutely.
you continue to alter that person's brain chemistry even further. Like, to me, this makes absolutely no sense of why they would even try to bring this up.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. So then the next thing that we were told is that he was going to need 6 weeks of radiation, and we're not talking localized radiation. So now remember, he had zero spread. They removed the entire tumor, so this child had no cancer at all any longer. Yet they wanted to do radiation on his, not just the cerebellum and localized. They wanted to radiate his entire brain and his entire spinal cord.
Joey, you went mute.
Oh, I'm
Are you
sorry.
there?
Can you?
There we go. There we go. Yep, I
Okay.
can hear you now. Sorry, what were you saying?
Okay, so anybody that knows anything about radiation knows both the long-term side effects and the short-term side effects are pretty horrific. So they were giving us a consent form for this radiation. We won't get to the chemo yet, but just for the radiation, saying that the child could suffer brain damage from the radiation, paralysis from the radiation, any single organ that's within alignment with that spinal cord. Now, remember, he's never had any spread to the spinal cord. They still wanted to do his entire spinal cord, entire brain. All of those organs are now subject to necrosis. They're subject to cancers later on in life from that radiation exposure. So to me, it didn't logically make sense to radiate a child's entire brain and entire spinal cord when the cancer was fully removed. And I would have even maybe been okay with, like, all right, you want to do localized radiation just around the cerebellum, the area where the cancer was. That might make a little bit more sense to me. But to now tell me that you want to radiate my son's entire brain. So now you're affecting every single portion of the brain and his entire spinal cord, which now is radiating every single organ within the body. So I'm a person that's very research driven. I
Mhm.
asked, and I have this on tape. I have a recording of this. I am gag ordered. I'm not allowed to play that recording. I was threatened with a lawsuit if I play this recording to anyone, but I recorded them. I went to another state where it's legal because Pennsylvania is a two-party consent state. So when they told me I couldn't record our meeting, I drove to New Jersey. New Jersey is a single party consent state, and I recorded our conversation. And I'm glad I did, but I'm still being suppressed as far as putting out that recording. But basically, they told me that I asked for studies. I wanted to see the comparison studies of children that have had just localized radiation on the cerebellum and radiation on the entire brain and the entire spinal cord. Show me the data that says that this is warranted in his case where there's no cancer any longer and no spread to the spinal cord. So they told me they had data. I said, okay, I'd like to see it. They're like, well, we're just going to go over it with you. I said, no, I don't want you to just go over it with me. I want to email it. Like, I have friends that do cancer research. I am not just going to look over it myself. I'm going to actually send it to people I know, and they're going to look at this too. And these are experts in the field. Well, they didn't want to send it to me. Then I asked in the meeting, and this is all recorded, how many people were in the study and where was this study conducted? And they're not expecting questions like this. Most parents just surrender everything to them. They're scared as hell. They hear the word cancer and it's like, you shut down. It's just like, these are the experts. Do whatever you can. Save my child. But that's just not me. I'm a research driven person. I have a background in medical research. So I'm not just going to blindly trust whatever somebody tells me.
Real quick,
So,
I want to add something just real fast before you continue. You know, it's crazy because based on, you know, my experiences with the healthcare system, there they even in the past, like, yes, they would try to push things on you, but like a lot of times, like, you had the ability to say no, you know, and
mhm,
you had the ability to not want to partake in this. And also, what I find that's just a massive red flag is the fact that they wouldn't even want to send you any of it. Like,
yeah.
why wouldn't, what do they have to hide? Because we even see this with vaccine inserts today as
Oh
well.
my
You know,
gosh.
like
Yeah.
when you request a vaccine insert to look at the ingredients, I mean, you're looked at like a biblically accurate angel. You're looked at like you have, like, you know, 1,200 eyes coming out of you, just because you didn't blindly trust and you wanted to look at something just to educate yourself and to gain more knowledge.
Trust me,
But
I know
like,
all about that. My son had a vaccine injury at 3 years old. I did a deep dive on vaccines. I could go on and on about that topic. He has not received any since 3 years old, but he suffered 6 cranial nerve palsy from that vaccine injury at 3 years old. It's confirmed by a physician, and basically, I to this day, I think that's what his brain cancer is from. So that's a
I
whole different topic.
for sure, no, I'd keep going. Yes, no, I definitely agree with you. But yes,
It's a
keep
big
going.
potential. You know, the child ate an organic diet his whole life until my divorce, and you know, he wasn't exposed to any kind of toxins. I was a fluoride-free person, just very organic with his diet and stuff. That's really the only thing that I can put my finger on that could have potentially caused this. Not saying that's definitely it. There's a lot of environmental factors in our lives today that could, you know, cause this type of cancer, but all right, that's just a whole nother story.
No, I'm
S
with you. I'm with you. Totally.
Yeah, and I don't wanna go down that whole rabbit hole right now.
No, no, totally. Keep going with
Um,
your story. Yeah.
okay, so what was I up to now? So all right, so I wanna see the comparative data. So I asked how many participants were in this study, and they said it was a study in France, and there were 15 participants in it. And they were saying that just doing localized radiation on the brain was unsuccessful, that every single patient in this study died. So I said, okay, well, I'm not going to take your word for it. I want to see the actual study. Send it to me. Took me about 2.5, 3 weeks to get the study, but eventually I got that study from them. And when I read it, I was really shocked because I'm like, am I missing something here? Like, something is not adding up. They told me that there were 15 participants. It was done in France. That part was true. But this study was from like 50 years ago. Okay. So that's first off, this is not new research or anything. And then when you read the study further, every single participant in the study got radiation on their entire brain and their entire spinal cord. It wasn't a comparative study of patients that just got localized radiation at the cerebellum. So I called them out on it. I said, you know, I sent it to some of my cancer research friends. I said, am I missing something? Am I reading this wrong? I've read a lot of studies. This seems the way it is. And they're like, no, you're not missing anything. It's not a comparison study at all.
Mhm.
So I sent them back a message and, I said, this is not a comparison study. Do you have any other data to back the fact that you want to radiate my son's entire brain and entire spinal cord? Mind you, when you radiate a child's brain, they can developmentally be delayed at the age that radiation occurs. So it's a very real factor that besides the radiation potentially killing the child or causing brain damage, it can actually cause that child to be developmentally delayed. So if they receive it at 4, that person could never develop past the age of 4. If they receive it at 10 and you're radiating the entire brain, there's a real possibility that child may not develop past the age of 10. So I had very real concerns, and the side effects are extremely complicated when you're going to do something like that. So I don't think it's unfair of me to want the research to back up what these people are about to do to my child.
I don't think it's unfair at all. I mean, we have a couple of comments from the viewers. Don,
Okay.
at this whole story at this point in time, is saying, "What in the actual fuck?" You
Yeah.
know,
What in the actual
based.
fuck, right? It's like, why can't you show me the research? So then when I asked for more comparative data, they go, well, we can't provide that to you. And I said, why not? They go, because all the kids died that didn't get this treatment before this way. And I'm like, this is fucking bullshit. Sorry, but it really is. And then I looked up, so my son has non-SHH, non-WTN, WNT medulloblastoma. So if
Mhm.
you look up, and you can research this on your own, the survival rate for children with that type of cancer is like 70% with treatment or less. Well, I'm sorry, 70% is typically WNT, but because his was non-WNT, then it could drop down to like 60%. And they also brought like their own little study that showed that there was like an 85% survival rate if they did their treatment to my child. And I looked up all different peer-reviewed studies. You can even ask ChatGPT. There's all different things that you could research this on. And I'm like, why is the number not adding up that what you're telling my ex-husband, the math is not mathing here. I can't find any other research paper that gives me this figure. And then what is his quality of life going to be after the treatment? Because they were proposing 6 weeks of radiation on his entire brain and spinal cord, and then 9 cycles of chemotherapy. Now, 9 cycles of chemotherapy is like, we're talking like 35 chemotherapy treatments in all.
Mhm.
Adults with the exact same cancer that I've spoken to that did go the chemotherapy route, which some of them just do the radiation, only do about 2 cycles of chemotherapy. So that's a whole nother
That sounds
weirdness.
like complete and total overkill for especially for a child, because I mean, if they're only doing the 2 cycles on people our age, adults, I mean, what gain or what benefit would they see at that point to do even more on a child, a smaller
Well,
individual, a smaller human being?
and then I asked them, well, how many children have you removed the cancer and not treated with chemotherapy and radiation? Like, what is the comparative data on the children that you've done alternative treatments or you haven't treated? And they're like, no, we've never done that. Like, we've never not treated a child. I said, okay, so then you don't have comparative data on what the outcome is for these children. And they're like, oh no, your son would be dead within 3 months if you didn't do this treatment. How do you know that? If you've never not treated a child that has this condition and you've not allowed their parents, which we'll get into that in a second, to do any kind of alternative treatments, you can't definitively tell me that this is the only way. I call bullshit on that.
I call bullshit on it too. I'm with you.
Yeah. So I basically, my brother, my older brother, his best friend's wife had a brain tumor. They gave her 3 months to live. They told her if she did chemo and radiation, it would probably extend her life to about 6 months, a year tops. She went the alternative route. Okay. That was over 5 years ago. Her brain tumor is now not detectable. I brought this up to them. Do you think a single one of them asked me, what did she do? Not a single one of them wanted to know what she did.
This is so
because they
crazy.
can't profit off of anything alternative. I've cured my own cancer. I'm 20 years cancer free. Not a single one of them asked me, how did you do it? This is like the craziness that we're dealing with. So I refuse to sign the consent form for the radiation treatment. I said, I'll consider signing something for localized treatment at the cerebellum, but there is no way in hell without any comparative data. I'm going to sign a consent form that allows you to radiate my son's brain, the entire brain and spinal cord, when this child is currently cancer free. That's not adding up to me. And that's when the threat started. If you don't sign this consent form, we're going to give your son a more harmful form of radiation.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what? So this, real quick, I just want to say, like, this is the bullying. I mean, that I've seen a lot. You getting some love from Diana Transcending Ascension. She said you got some top level strength. And
Yeah.
then Christine B said you would buy a car. Would you buy a car without test driving it? Yeah, I mean, exactly. No,
Yeah.
great points. But the fact that they bully, I can't believe that would leave.
And the craziest thing is my ex-husband was in the room when they said that to us. They said, if you don't sign this consent form today, we are not going to give your son proton radiation, which is a safer form of radiation. We're going to give him photon radiation, which is far more dangerous to a child. And I said, are you fucking serious right now? Put that in writing. You need to put in writing what you just told me, because I'm not signing the consent form today. I haven't even gotten second opinions. And then we'll get into what they did with the second opinions that I tried to get. So I sent out a whole bunch of second opinions to all different hospitals, and they're all kind of the same, but you got to do your due diligence.
Mhm,
And I also sent out some to like the Brzezinski Center. I'm sure some of your viewers are familiar with it. It's a little bit more alternative.
mhm.
I even checked out places down in Mexico like Hoxie that do completely alternative things with people with cancers and stuff. And for number one, they said they weren't going to allow me to take them out of the country to a place like Mexico for any kind of alternative treatments. That was off the table. But then I come to find out about a week and a half after, and this is very time sensitive. They claim when you start the treatment has to be within a certain time period after the brain surgery. Well, a week and a half after I sent out all my second opinion referrals, I come to find out not a single, I called up like because I hadn't heard back from anybody. They
Mhm.
never sent out any of my second opinion referrals. So I
What?
was, yeah, never sent them out because remember, this is a business. So this hospital wanted to retain a patient. I literally had to call in a favor from a friend who contacted one of the US senators, and that US senator's office had to call the hospital in order to get them to send out my second opinion referrals. By the time those second opinion referrals got sent out, it was too late for me to take him anywhere else. Okay. So this is the kind of games we're playing in this world. This is literally a very profit driven business. Chemotherapy is extremely profitable. It's
Mhm.
not a preventative. If chemotherapy was a preventative, 1 in every 2 men is going to get cancer in their lifetime. 1 in every 3 women is going to get cancer in their lifetime. Why are these oncologists not on chemotherapy preventative treatments? And this is what I told them. I said, if he doesn't have cancer, we're going to just radiate his whole freaking body and then give him 9 cycles of preventative chemotherapy.
What?
Not adding up to me. So you can imagine when I told them that I was not signing the consent form, that didn't really go over too well because I said I can't possibly sign this consent form. I would prefer to do alternative treatments for several months, monitor him with MRIs, see how this progresses. If there's any indication that he has any type of cancer after I try it my way, we can proceed on to standard of care. But I'm not going to put my son at risk to all the complications and all the side effects of radiating an entire healthy brain and spinal cord when there is no evidence of any detectable cancer. Doesn't make any logical sense.
It doesn't. I was going to ask you, do you want me to bring up that consent form real quick? Do you want
Yeah, bring up the
everybody?
consent form because
Let's take a
like
look at it.
that one of the parts that I want to really highlight, first of all, we'll go to the first page at first.
I'm
You're
I'm,
gonna
I'm gonna
notice
I'm gonna hide the title of
hide the
because on
title of the
here,
hospital and all that, but
yeah.
basically
Let
bring
me.
up the consent form, and what the audience is going to see is that on that consent form on the very front page, they literally state that your doctor, the oncology team, has gone over alternative treatments with you and you are aware that these treatments are available. And the craziest part about that is they did not go over any alternative treatments. When I brought up alternative treatments for this particular type of cancer, and we can get into what some of those alternative treatments are, but when I did bring up alternative treatments, they were shot down immediately. And they said they would not consent to that. And I said, it's not your child's. Like, it's my child, it's my decision. I'm the one that has to live with the consequences of these treatments. They didn't care. They said that they were gonna override my consent, and then they talked to my ex-husband and basically got him to sign the consent form. We have 50-50 custody.
Mhm.
In our court order, it literally says that neither of us is allowed to unilaterally consent to any medical decisions. Yet they completely took one party consent for the radiation. And then when it came to the chemotherapy, they did the exact same thing and took one party consent for the chemotherapy.
So I had to kind of just expand it here. I hope everybody can see it well because I'm not trying to let the name of the hospital get aired. But here it does say we have chemotherapy risks. Your oncology team has recommended the use of. We have discussed the potential benefits of using these medicines and alternative types of treatments that might be used. So there, that just solidifies what you were just saying.
Yeah, so they wanted me to put my consent on a piece of paper that says that they discussed alternative treatments with me, and yet they refused to discuss any alternative treatments with me. And once you see like then some of the side effects on this consent form, so like out of 100 children that receive this particular chemotherapy, 20 to 100, so you're talking 20 to 100% are going to suffer kidney failure requiring dialysis. Okay. And I'm sure you can pull up some of the other side effects and kind of run through some of them. We're not talking about some minor side effects for this child. We're talking some serious risks that these kids are undergoing. And maybe that would be okay if the child had active cancer. But I don't know how many adults here would put themselves through radiating their entire body and doing 9 cycles of chemotherapy if they had 0 detectable cancer in their body.
That's what's blowing my mind here because it even states in the consent form, and when you look at everything, everything that's on paper is hard, guys. Like you can't deviate away from any kind of contract or consent form, especially was listed. I mean, that's supposed to be
Cancer is one of the things listed on the consent form. It says that your child runs the risk of getting cancer from the treatment, and it's
Yes, it does.
right
Cancer of
on
the
there.
bone marrow caused by, yeah, cancer of the
Yeah.
bone marrow caused by chemotherapy later in life, the
The
kidney
that's not even
damage.
the radiation consent form, which so basically without my consent, they proceeded to radiate my son with unilateral consent from his dad. And the radiation completely destroyed his ability to eat. We're talking that
Man,
his
dude.
stomach became non-functional. He is on a J tube. A J tube doesn't even go into your stomach, it goes into your intestines because he can't even have his feeds going into his stomach. Because, like I suspected, I knew the radiation was going to do far too much damage, especially on a child that had absolutely no cancer in his spinal cord. And I told them, I'm not going to consent to that. It's too dangerous. Sure enough, destroyed his gut. He's on a J tube and he's had a
Just
lot of problems with that. And I can't really give a medical update, but we were just in the hospital for a serious complication from that tube that could have been life-threatening.
I'm at a loss for words that the biggest thing I'm at a loss for words is the downright outright bullying that occurred. They basically it was almost like they were trying to blackmail you,
Yeah, pretty
by saying
much.
like if you don't agree to this, we're just going to give them the worst stuff possible. They did
Yep.
not discuss any alternative treatments with you at all. And you look at, I mean, you're looking at the side effects of this consent form and everything that it entails, and it's just causing even more damage. I mean, especially
Yeah.
your son's still developing.
Yes.
He's young, and to do this to the development of a young child is just beyond words to me.
Yeah, and especially a young child that is cancer-free, remember. Those are the key
Yes,
words here. You're talking
cancer
about a
free,
young child that
exactly.
is completely cancer-free, that is now being forced against his will and against his mother's will to partake in a treatment that is causing significant irreparable damage to his body. Chemotherapy, like I said, is not a preventative. So when you give it to somebody that doesn't have cancer, and anyone could just pull up ChatGPT right now and ask ChatGPT what happens if you give chemotherapy to a person without cancer, it's going to basically tell you that it's going to destroy their healthy cells because there are no cancer cells to destroy. And essentially, that's what it's been doing. We've been in and out of the hospital since September, more in than out. And I'm not going to talk specifics about him, but I will say that a lot of these children, and I'll just say this because I can't give specifics. I've been gag ordered to give specifics and updates on his particular medical condition. So I will talk in general terms.
Gotcha.
These kids cannot eat, a lot of them at all. They lose their ability to eat. They lose their hair, which is a very common side effect, not the biggest deal. They wind up in wheelchairs. They can't walk. They wind up with severe neuropathy. Let's just say some children, not specifically naming any, throw up every single day. You're talking nausea almost round the clock. They're on about 15 different medications a day going through a J or G tube. Um, I think there's only about 5 days since September that I have not witnessed a particular child vomiting. And I don't know how many adults would put up with that, where since September, you're talking, how many months is that now? October, November, December, January, February, March, April. I'm losing track of time because I'm in the hospital so long. 7
We're
months
getting
of
we're getting close to
da-
almost a year. Yeah.
7 months of daily vomiting. Do you know what that does to your body?
It
um,
has to damage your esophagus. It has to damage your stomach. I mean, yeah, that's not good.
it's not good at all. And you are literally, as a parent, given no right to refuse this. Um, did eventually go to court with my ex because let's just say some of these kids have significant trouble with these treatments, and some of them drop over 20% of their body weight within a month. And enough was enough. And unfortunately, it's you against a pediatric oncologist in court. So the
And
pediatric oncologist is going to say that your child is going to die without this treatment. And they don't have any proof to back that up because remember, they've already said they've never allowed a parent to do anything alternative. Now, I have met two parents that had the exact same type of cancer as my child. The only difference is their child still had cancer. So they weren't able
mhm.
to remove the entire tumor. And these parents fled with these kids because they knew that the treatment was going to be too harsh. There's a chiropractor I know, fled with his kid, got under the radar. He's been treating his son with ivermectin and menbendazole and high dose CBD and Rick Simpson oil. I mean, full spectrum cannabis oil and some other alternative treatments like high dose vitamin C,
Mhm.
Laetrile. and all of these alternatives, soursop. His son has been, it's almost a year and a half. Not only does he not have any cancer, remember, they left part of the tumor in this child. It is gone on MRIs now, completely gone. And I met another parent, same thing. It's been about a year for that child. Now remember, they said these children will be dead in 3 months if they don't do the standard of care treatment. Another child, same thing, they fled. Then I talked to other parents whose children had different types of cancer, but they too were being given chemotherapy with no detectable cancer. So they left, went to Mexico, treated their kids alternatively. It's been 7 years for those parents that I've spoken to, and their kid is still cancer free. So
That's
chemo and
amazing.
radiation, I'm sorry, they're not the only treatments for cancer. And a lot of these treatments are being suppressed by the pharmaceutical industry for profit.
One
And
thing I
it's
want
got
to
to
ask
stop with
you
these kids.
real quick, Joey, if you were kind of piped up about something real quick,
Sure.
there's actually few cures for cancer out there that are not allowed in the U.S. One specifically called Garson therapy. Have you happened to hear of this before?
Garson therapy, I've not. I know about Rife therapy. I know about like IV Laetrile, vitamin C therapy, soursop, lots of
We're
other
gonna look that
therapies.
up.
But yeah,
I'm
we'll
gonna
look
make a
that
note
up.
of that and I'll send that to you. So if it's something that can help, yes, definitely.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like, because of my, custody situation, I can't just, like, up and leave the country with my child,
Mhm.
or I become, like, a fugitive. So, it's fucked
I,
up, you know? It's
I
like
know you
my
felt like it.
of course, like, what parent wouldn't when you watch your child, like, suffer the consequences and you know that they are cancer-free, and yet they're not handling the treatments well, but they won't stop. Okay, so this is another thing that really has to be said. And hopefully one day I get to play this tape. But I asked them in that meeting when I went to New Jersey and recorded them, I said, so if the treatment is killing my son, will you stop? And they said yes and no. I said, what the heck? What do you mean yes and no? And they
Well,
said, well, we won't stop the treatments, but we'll give him medication for the side effects. So I was like, the side effects of death? You're going to give my child medication for the side effects of death? This is the level of insanity that we are talking about. Okay. They won't even stop if they know for a fact these treatments are killing your child. Just like that little girl that you put up in the beginning of the post, her mom begged them to stop the treatments because she saw that the treatments were killing her child. By the way, her daughter was cancer free. I'm going to mention somebody else, and I hope they don't mind me mentioning their name,
mhm.
but there's a woman, Candace, that reached out to me. You can look up her story, it's on YouTube. Her son was Nicholas Gunnarsson. Nicholas was seen in a hospital in Long Island for blood cancer. His mom saw that the chemotherapy was harming Nicholas, it was killing him. She took him down to Florida for alternative treatments. The alternative treatments were so successful, Nicholas was in remission. The hospital in Long Island went and got a court order, court junction, kidnapped Nicholas at 3 o'clock in the morning in Florida, brought him back, medically kidnapped him, brought him back to the hospital in Long Island, and killed Nicholas with chemotherapy. There is no consequences for these people. So, me as a parent, I was threatened. My lawyer was told if I didn't sign, which I did not, I never signed a consent for the chemo or radiation, still to this day. But they said if my ex husband didn't sign the form, which he willingly signed, unfortunately, he's just at a lower level of conscious awareness. So he just trusts blindly medical establishments. But
Mhm.
bottom line is, if he didn't sign, my lawyer was told that they were going to get a court order. They were going to charge me with neglect, medically kidnap my child, and do the treatments anyway, and then keep me from my child because now I'm neglectful because I
This
want to
is
treat him alternatively.
this is just this is I I'm just kind of I'm at a loss for words with a lot of this, because I mean,
Yeah.
I know you and I have talked about some of this, but the medical kidnapping is something I've seen in many cases, and the medical kidnapping I've seen destroy families. One documentary I'm going to throw out there, just for everybody to check out to kind of see how this goes down and see how corrupt. It's called Please Save Maya. I don't
Yeah.
remember if it's on Netflix or Amazon. I'm not 100% sure, but basically, it's a very similar situation. The child had a very rare disorder, which to me, the disorder sounded like some kind of strange government experiment, the symptoms that she was having. And her parents got her, alternative help, put everything into remission. A hurricane came, and because of the drop in pressure, it brought back the symptoms. So they brought her to the hospital. So the mom went into the hospital. The mom was a let me just lay this out for you guys. The mom was she was a nanotechnologist, and she was in organic chemistry, organic chem, reputable in the scientific community. And the mom walks into the hospital and she's like, this is what my daughter needs. This is what's going to make her better. And then and they ended up medically kidnapping the child. The hospital ignored all paperwork and all calls from the doctor, who is a certified MD, who medically treated her in the alternative therapy. In this case, it was ketamine therapy,
Hmm.
and it completely ignored her. They violated her. They took naked photos of her, the child, without the parents being around. So, like, I just want to kind of lay that out there for people who might
I
think,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I want to mention another really important documentary. It's called Flipping the Script. And look it up. It's about these kids that don't have cancer. They're in full remission. They are cancer free and they are medically kidnapped and forced to have chemo. And people don't understand chemotherapy can cause brain damage. Chemotherapy can cause paralysis. Chemotherapy can cause kidney failure, liver failure. The list goes on and on. The side effects of chemotherapy, I'm sorry, as a parent, I and any other parent in America does not have the right to choose how your child is going to be treated for cancer. Now, if he was 18 and he was an adult, he would have the right to refuse. My son begged me not to get these treatments. Do you know how hard it is as a parent to look your son in the face and say that you don't have a choice?
I can't
He was,
imagine. This is I I only feel for your son at this
yeah.
point, because being going through everything that he's going through, and in his situation, I'm sure he feels helpless. And I'm not gonna lie, that kind of pisses me off a little
Yeah,
bit that
and
he
thank God, like, he's a very strong soul, like, he's a definite old soul, and, I believe, like, everything in life, we've talked about this, there's a lesson to every single thing that we go through in life,
Mhm.
and even this, like, I have to reframe it as a lesson. This has taught me, like, the deepest amount of love and compassion, and this has shown me just how strong my son is to be going through such a challenge, and like he is smiling through most of it. I'm able to like up his spirits through dance all the time. Singing and dancing is like his thing, and I can get that kid on a bad day like to sing or dance, like it raises his spirits, it raises his vibration. He's really good at just like even for his recent procedure, they lied to me and told me they were going to sedate him, and when we got down there, they were like, "No, like, I'm sorry, like, they didn't put an order for sedation." I'm like, "You can't do the procedure then." They're like, "We have to do this because basically, I'm not going to get into what it was, but it had to be done." So I said, "Well, if we start and he can't handle it, like, I'm stopping this. Like, this is cruel." They did give him pain meds and something, for anxiety, but still, like, the kid should have been sedated for this particular procedure.
I
He had
agree.
and, luckily, like, he is so strong. I did some breath work with him to get him through it, and he, like, focused on his breath and, like, worked his way through it, but no child should have to do that, Like, it's just the level of cruelty that goes into these people. I mean, I can get into stories. here's one particular story. So not only do you not have a right to choose when it comes to like the chemotherapy and the radiation, but as a parent, remember, my ex is not allowed to make any unilateral medical decisions about medications or any of that stuff. Well, they had, let's just call this person J, on a steroid medication. And I have a medical background. I know that long-term use of this particular steroid leads to a dependency when this person gets ill. It suppresses the immune system to where they need a rescue injection if anything happens. If they get hurt, if they get ill, they're going to need a rescue injection of a steroid. And I warned them about this. I said, he's been on it too long. We need to wean him off of this particular steroid. And they just like scarfed at me. And I said, I'm not giving you consent to give him this steroid any longer. You're weaning him off. The doctor looked me right in the eye and she goes, we're doing it anyway. We're going to
What?
do it
Oh
anyway.
my, oh
And they
my
did. And they gave it to my son anyway. And guess
gosh.
what? When he got out of the hospital about 2 weeks later, something happened. And guess what? He needed that rescue injection just like I predicted. They didn't care though. We're doing it anyway. Mom doesn't have a say. They've completely taken me out of the loop, put me as a bad guy. Okay, this gets even worse. And when your audience hears this, people are not going to like this at all. So I mentioned that me and my ex-husband have 50-50 custody. And let's just say he's not the nicest person. And like I said, he's operating from a lower level of conscious awareness than I am. So he starts telling the hospital and the hospital social worker that because we have 50-50 custody, I shouldn't be allowed up there with my child who's going through this crazy time. And what does a child want most when they're sick? Mom. Me
Their
and my
mom.
son are like inseparable. We have such a strong bond. He tells the hospital social worker he doesn't want to be around me and I shouldn't be up there 50% of the time. So you know what him and the hospital social worker go and do behind my back? They go and sit down, have a meeting. She calls me up on October 18th. He was diagnosed September 12th. On October 18th, she tells me, we set up a visitation schedule. You can't come up here for 48 hours, and you're only allowed to come up to the hospital every 48 hours to see your son. I said, are you like, you got to be mentally deranged if you think you're keeping me from my child. Well, he's going through this. He was in the middle of getting radiation for the 6-week radiation thing. I said, you're not keeping me from him. She's like, Joey, I will call CPS on you and I will have that child taken away from you if you come up to this hospital. I said,
I'm trying to keep my like temper down at this
yep.
point. I'm just
So,
like
so I said, so basically, you're going to file a false CPS report on me because I want to be around my son. What validates you calling CPS and reporting me? And I have witnesses. She was on speakerphone. I also have, I had hired patient advocates that heard her saying some of this stuff, and we have it all documented. But she literally told me that they were keeping me from my son. And then they proceeded to tell me that if I came up to the hospital, they were going to have um, hospital security escort me off the premises. And then they were going to completely ban me from the hospital if I came up on his 48 hours. So, as crazy as this is, I had to file at my local courthouse in order to get that overturned. Took me at least 3 weeks to get a court date and get into that courtroom. And thank God the judge had some common sense in at least this particular matter, because he was like, no, that's absolutely absurd. Nobody is keeping a mother from her child during a cancer diagnosis. So he basically overturns that and says, on dad's time with the child, mom can be up there during visiting hours, which is 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So as soon as I get that court order, I send it over to the hospital social worker and I said, you're not keeping me from my son anymore. I'm going to be up there today. Well, she turns around and tells me that's not how I'm interpreting the court order. You can only be up here till 5 o'clock. And if you don't leave at 5 p.m., We're going to have you escorted off the property and we're calling CPS on you. And I said, you can call whoever the F you freaking want. I am not leaving the hospital. I'm going to be there at 6 o'clock. I'm going to have the court order in my hands. And if you try to escort me off the property, I am going to live stream it. And everybody is going to see you escorting a mom that's not caused any problems up the hospital at all, have never caused any issues, just refused to sign a consent form. I am going to live stream it. The world is going to see that what you're doing, and I'm going to have a court order, and then I'm going to sue you personally, and I'm going to sue this hospital for violating my court order. And so basically, my lawyer then also had to call her and basically threaten her that we were going to file a lawsuit if they didn't, abide by this court order and allow me to stay up at the hospital with my son. But the fact that I even had to go through those lengths and go to court, what the F is wrong with the hospital and what the F is wrong with the hospital social worker? These people are supposed to be there to support the child and the child's best needs. Keeping a mother from a child, he had a freaking meltdown. Like it actually was up on my Facebook at first because my patient advocate said you need to record this. He couldn't even go into his radiation treatment because I had to tell him that I couldn't come back for 48 hours. Do you know what that does to a child with cancer or that's undergoing cancer treatment? Because remember, he's cancer free. But to tell a child, I'm sorry, I can't come up for 48 hours to see you, like it completely messed with him, like psychologically.
I'm just, I'm like I've even, since we've been talking, I am, I am at a loss for words.
Yeah.
That's just quite literally, and we have again, some comments from the viewers. Um, Karen from Grateful Heart, crazy how blatantly their crimes are in plain sight, still waiting for them to receive consequences. Angel Wings posted a comment. I'm going to talk with you about it after the show.
Okay.
We're gonna hash that, and we're gonna bring that up as a potential. And then, of course, you are getting so much love from Diana Training Ascension. She says you're an amazing hero,
Oh, thank you,
for
Diana.
sticking up for everything. But yes, no, I'm at a complete, it gets me emotional. I'm like emotional right
I
now
know. And if I've
because
not gone to like the level that I am at, like at my conscious awareness, I don't know how I would be getting through this at all personally. Like if I didn't have like some of my practices and tools under my belt, and I've gotten my mind so even that the external circumstances no longer affect me in the way that they affect an average person. I
Mhm.
honestly don't know what an average person would do in my case. And, they bully a lot of these parents. I saw it with these like visitation schedules where they keep one of the parents away from the child. None of these other parents had the balls to stand up to these people. And I told them, go and get a court order like I did. Like, don't allow them to keep you from your child. Like, this is insane. Unfortunately, the court did not side with me on the chemotherapy issue, which is pretty criminal because it's not their child as well. But unfortunately, he's going to have to do the full 9 cycles of chemotherapy without my consent. And I have to stand by and watch it.
If anybody out there is listening right now that can do something about this, please reach out to me.
Yeah, it's
I
got to
will.
stop. The medical tyranny in America has to stop. And this is not uncommon. This is what your audience has to understand. I've spoken to many other parents with children that are completely cancer free that are medically kidnapped by the system. Their parents refuse to sign the paperwork. I've had several parents reach out to me already. They were both in agreement that the child should not receive the treatment because they are cancer free, and those children are forced to do the treatments. Their parents are charged with neglect if they refuse to sign the consent forms. It's not neglectful to not want a child that doesn't have cancer to not to receive chemotherapy. I'm sorry, it's not.
It's not neglectful at all, and so I mean, and this is because, and I think what because this is the thing about our healthcare system. They don't like educated people. They don't, and I've dealt
No.
with it. I've dealt with it too because I'm an educated person when it comes to the things that I put in my body, and the understanding and getting to know these things. And I've again, I mean, I can't even tell you. Like it was 2021. I was going to get a physical, and during the physical, they asked me, "Would you like a flu shot?" And I looked at him and I said, "No, I'm good." I said, "I like my immune system to get its own workout." You know what I mean? And they looked at me like I was a biblically accurate angel, like I had
Well,
1,200 eyes all over me.
yeah, can I just tell you that they literally tried to give my son a flu shot while he was undergoing radiation treatment and chemotherapy. And I was like,
Man,
are you out of your mind? Like this kid already has a compromised immune system. Now you want to hit him with a flu shot? Like absolutely not. Now my son has a religious exemption. Um, but that's absolutely crazy that they would even consider giving a child with cancer a flu shot. And we're lied to. We're told like we need to get our shots to protect these immunocompromised children, yet they're trying to give these kids flu shots.
dude, that's the thing. Even during radiation, they're trying to give him.
Yeah.
To me, you have to, if you are an actual human being, right? And I was actually discussing this earlier. I was like, if you're actually, you have to, like, if you see something that's morally wrong and you know it's morally wrong, like you
Well,
have to be that good human being and you have to say
yeah.
something about it.
You want to talk about morally wrong. So, some of the types of chemotherapy that they have to administer to these children, they have to wear, and I should have sent you a picture of it, they have to wear special protective gear. So they have to wear a special gloves and special medical gown because it is so toxic that if they get this chemotherapy on their skin, it'll eat away at their skin and cause significant damage and significant side effects to these nurses. And I've told the nurses, like, if you have to wear that in order to administer this, there's a problem. This should not be being injected. This is literally going into a port, a central line catheter into my child. Yet you have to wear that level of protective gear because you can't even spill it on yourself.
I'm it's like this is there's got to be, it sucks because, like we were saying, you could see this revolving door
It
between, I
is.
mean, not just this hospital and the legal system, but we see this with many other hospitals in the legal system too. And if you don't mind, because I remember this, let's if you're okay with talking about it, that lawyer that stiffed you
Oh yeah. So
over
let me
this.
bring up one more point. If I can
Yeah, yeah,
remember, I
yeah.
wanted to okay, so like how they said that he had to have 9 cycles of chemotherapy. So I researched certain other standard of care treatments for his particular type of cancer, medulloblastoma, and there were other alternatives. So 9 cycles is usually given to a patient upon my research that typically has spread through their brain and through their spinal cord. Remember, he was cancer free. I found other standard of care treatments, which are still toxic, but at least trying to find less harmful standard of care treatments that were only 4 cycles of chemotherapy. These are given to children every day at St. Jude's Hospital. Yet when I approached the oncology team with the 4 cycle plan, completely denied me. Wouldn't even allow me to choose a different form of a standard of care treatment. That's criminal. Like, I mean, I don't even have the right to choose which standard of care treatment, so they won't let me do alternative, but then at least let me choose which chemotherapy standard of care we're going to do because there were other treatment plans with 4 cycles. So then, if we want to get into that lawyer, I hired a lawyer and I paid him 7,500 up front, and he said he was gonna help this whole situation. He was gonna make sure that I got in to see my son and lift that ban, that 48-hour ridiculous ban. He was going to make sure that they didn't vaccinate my son at the hospital while he was there. All these things he promised me when I gave him the money. He did absolutely nothing. Weeks are going by, he's doing absolutely nothing. I finally had to threaten him to basically give me my money back or I'm going to report him to the bar agency. He wound up giving me half of my money back, so at least I got something back. But it turns out, like, I demanded seeing the emails between him and the hospital. He was friends with them. It was like they went to the same parties and stuff.
Oh
So I
my
was like,
god.
it's so corrupt.
Dude, I'm
So
just like,
yeah, so then I had to get a different attorney and I did have to go to court and at least I did get that whole 48-hour thing lifted. So that was a
Dude,
win.
so this is the case example, like what I was saying, the revolving door
Ugh,
between the healthcare systems and the legal system. And everybody who's listening just heard that. The lawyer basically stiffed her for the money, was friends with these individuals at the hospital.
yeah,
And this is how intertwined it is. I don't think people understand. When we talk about this
no,
stuff, people act like this is some like tinfoil hat wearing bullshit, but it's not. I mean, we have case in point evidence right here that this kind of
yeah,
stuff actually goes on.
yep, yeah. I probably should have still reported him to the bar because I only got half my money back, but it's a learning lesson.
I'm with you. I completely understand. I completely understand. So if you don't mind, let's get into what has kind of helped you get through the situation, because the one thing I want to let everybody know is Joey does have her own YouTube channel. It's called High Frequency Content. I have it in the description for both the Rumble and the YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Everybody who's listening, go ahead and follow her. Go ahead and subscribe for me.
Thank you.
Okay. But we know you have a very huge, I know you have a very huge spiritual background. And in
Yeah.
case anybody else is going through this out there, I would really like you to lay down what helped get you through this and to get you to where you're standing today with the strength that you have. Because I'm going to tell you what, like I'm getting emotional right now. Like I want to like drive my car through this hospital front door and like just light it on fire. We'll get
Yeah.
your
And
son
trust
out
me,
first. Don't get
I
me
had
wrong.
to go through some of that and work through like the emotions of like, first of all, like having a child that was so capable and then having a child that needs round the clock care, go through the emotions of basically having my decision making completely ripped out from under me and not having the right to choose what type of treatment my child was going to have. So I had to work through that. But, I had a near death experience many years ago. And one thing that came out of that, which started me on my entire spiritual quest and journey, was I realized that we're immortal, this is kind of like a play. This is a game we're playing here. And, we take on certain challenges and all this stuff. And so my son also has the understanding that he's immortal. I've taught him that from a very young age. So we
Very
come
cool.
from this like from a different perspective than most probably would. I don't live in fear. I don't fear death for myself. I don't fear it for my child. I don't want him to die, but I know he is immortal. And so having that understanding has like tremendously helped me. Like my near death experience proved to me I'm immortal, that, we do go on. And it's just been a huge benefit to have that understanding. I'm also a coach that helps people get through extremely traumatic situations, drug addiction, traumatic life circumstances, a breathwork facilitator. So having these tools under my belt prior to this happening just showed me like how crazy life is. Like all of my adversities and all of my hardships that I faced, because I had a really difficult childhood growing up and like a lot of trauma in my childhood, and I had to work through that over the years. I had to cure my own PTSD and stuff like that, but it just gave me the resilience to be able to overcome any kind of circumstance, any kind of challenge. And I'm at a point in my life where I don't allow the external circumstances to dictate my inner state of being. And that is a really sweet spot to be. It's a really powerful place to be. And I'm glad I'm
It is.
here. I'm constantly evolving. So I won't be the same person 10 years from now that I am now. 10 years ago, I probably would have done things a lot differently. I'd probably be arrested right now for what they're doing to my child because I would have dealt with it in a very different manner. But I've evolved to understand that no matter what the circumstances, we're going to get through this and we're going to come out okay on the other side.
One thing I want to highlight, that we spoke about before the show on how these challenges that we experience in our life
Hmm.
ultimately are what help us grow.
Yeah.
Challenges equal growth is the theme. And and sometimes, just listening to your story and everybody here who's listening to Joey's story, we get shaken up by the divine. We do. We get shaken up. Our world can get flipped upside down.
Yeah.
And
And are you going to live in fear, or are you going to face that challenge head on and know that no matter what, you're infinite, you're immortal. It's just a game, it's just a play, it's just an illusion you're getting through.
so believe it or not, I gotta bring this up real quick. Neil, who was just on the show Sunday, he posted this meme. Let
Mhm.
me pull it up real quick because it's case in point to everything that you're saying. Let me see if I can get it real quick on here real fast. But here we go. Here we go. Right here. Everybody is gonna love this because you're gonna love this too, Joey. Let me just bring it up real quick because I know everybody in the audience is going to resonate with this meme. So we have the fears we don't face become our limits.
Absolutely.
And that is something I wanted to bring up here because exactly. I remember talking to you in the earlier stages of this happening, and now the of course, I can't imagine being a parent and having all of this down. But the fact that you found this strength and through your awareness, through your understanding of your divine nature,
Mhm.
through the trials and tribulations that you face with this, I got to say, you're absolutely remarkable for how far you've
Thank you.
come with all of this, and everything you've dealt with along the way. I mean,
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah, you just need to know that everybody in the audience agrees too, and
Yeah, I
like,
mean, it's just like I do post on the high frequency content page. If you go to my page, I do explain like how we use these challenges and how like you can basically transmute any challenge in your life into power and stuff like that, because you really can. And this is only going to strengthen me. It's only going to strengthen my son. Like I said, this is just a little tiny piece of our immortal journey. So, when you look at it from that higher conscious level of perspective, it can really help you to get through any kind of challenge.
100%. And yeah, exactly. And I have a term, I call it emotional transmutation, because
Yeah,
like, because when you're undergoing these challenges, the emotions are running high,
yeah,
and I mean they're flowing through you, I mean, as that's a normal response to everything that's happening.
yeah. And you
And
have to release that. You have to let it flow through you. So whatever modality you find in order to do that, you can't like hold on to that anger and that hatred and that pain, because trust me, in the beginning, like I hated these doctors. But what is that gonna do for me? It's not gonna serve me, it's not gonna serve my son to hold on to that anger. So I did have to find ways to release that, but at least I know and I have ways and abilities that I can do that. And then allow that stuff to just flow on through me.
I'm glad the Kriya has been helping you too. That's
Yes,
something
thank
that
you. I've
makes me
really been
super
enjoying that Kriya Yoga, yep.
it makes me super happy. But no, exactly, man. We have to allow we can allow ourselves to feel these emotions. It's what we
Yeah,
do with
it's
them and
natural,
the
you have
energy of
to.
them.
Mhm.
So you're also a breathwork coach. Why don't you enlighten everybody on that?
Yeah, so basically, I'm big into like plant medicines and stuff like that, but I know they're not for everyone. And so through breath work and through like an intense modality of breath work, I help people get into like altered states of consciousness and kind of help to release a lot of stress and trauma in their lives. And so I'll be doing my next class in Pennsylvania. If you're in the Lehigh Valley, it's going to be at Twin Ponds on April 18th. And it'll be my first one actually since his diagnosis, since I've been taking time off to obviously care for him.
Of
Yeah.
course, man. Well,
And Yeah.
it's just amazing, all of this, man, like, and everything that you're doing. But continue, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, and so, there's been a lot of ups and downs. There's even, I think we talked about this, like his dad didn't want to sign his Make-A-Wish consent form, stuff like that. So, I mean, you just keep adding layers and layers onto the fuckery as you
Well,
go.
I just
Um,
I can't believe that's the one thing throughout this whole thing. You're gonna have the whole audience taking a trip to Pennsylvania to throw him in a burlap sack out into the
yeah,
ocean with some cement shoes, But
yeah,
rightfully so. Like that's something I don't. That's another thing I have to give you credit for. What you've dealt with his dad and what
yeah,
I
hasn't
will
been
just say
easy.
pure
Yeah,
selfishness.
I won't get into specifics, but like like this is something that should be bringing people together for the child's sake. And like this is not about him, this is not about me. This is about what is best for this child at this moment. And he made it all about him and all about trying to kind of used the kid as a pawn in order to hurt me. And that's not cool. And, he's going to have to deal with that at some point in his life because my son recognizes it. I recognize it. But I understand that he is operating from, like I said, a lower level of conscious awareness. So I have to forgive him for that. And it's just, I can't hold on to that either.
I'm telling you. By the way, you have somebody. So we have Karen. That she's 90 minutes away from Lehigh. So
Okay.
yes. So
Yeah,
Karen,
go
if you
on my
want to,
Facebook page, Joey Sky, or I also have a Facebook business page, Empowerment Coaching and Breathwork by Joey Sujoris, that you can check out. And I post
for
dates for my workshops.
for sure, Karen. If you go, she's on my page. It's Joey Sky. You can either go through my friends because they're not private, or you can look her up. But yeah, no, that's really
Mhm.
awesome that you want to go. Well, the one thing I want to say, before we kind of start to wind down is the number one reason I wanted to do this show. I wanted to do it for you because I know you wanted to get your story out there.
Yeah, and
And
I just want people to be aware that this is not uncommon. This is happening to children that do not have cancer all across America. So if you live in America, your child gets a cancer diagnosis, and you're into alternative medicine, you better fucking book it to Mexico real fast because you're going to get one shot to get there before they medically kidnap your child and force treatment on them.
and I also wanted to have this show too because people need to know about this. And it's we got your friend Christine B. Thank you for sharing this story. Absolutely, Christine B.
Mhm.
I'm trying to keep my cool right now with
Yeah,
some of the things.
Christina knows a lot more that I haven't disclosed yet, but I mean, it runs real deep, the level of evil. And like me and my son are both intuitives, and we talked about this, Steve. Um, this is another thing that has to be brought up. So even if my son was treated, I did not want him treated at this particular hospital because the head oncologist at the hospital he's being treated at has a major conflict of interest. She has a research fund for children with recurrent medulloblastoma. So she has a special interest to make sure that there are patients in order to fund her research. Remember, this is an extremely rare cancer. It's not a lot
This
of
is
kids that you can get into this research study because we're talking about 300 kids per year. And then when you get into my son's subtype, that number goes down way lower. So, in order for her to get those kids, it's a little bit of a conflict of interest that she's treating my child. I brought this up to my ex saying, even if he has to be treated standard of care, this cannot be the place because of that conflict of interest. She has a special interest to have some of these kids have this cancer reoccur, and it fell on deaf ears. I had paid $500. Well, my friend Daniel Murphy, thank you, Daniel Murphy, paid to have my ex have a consultation with Dr. William Mekius. A lot of you know him. He is the person for ivermectin mebendazole and high-dose CBD oil. It's been very successful. There are peer-reviewed studies on this. This is not bullshit. Like, this is become effective. It's not effective for every type of cancer, but for brain cancers in particular, this treatment is highly effective. I know of several people that have done it with great success, along with some other alternatives they added on, and yet wouldn't even take the consultation. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, the level of kind of like my choice was completely taken away in this entire situation. And that's another lesson, like surrendering, because that's all I could do at this point was surrender or become a fugitive, like we talked about. And I mean, I don't think I'm going to get too far with facial recognition technology. Let's face it.
No, it's gonna be a little tidbit. I would if you don't mind adding it in.
Sure.
Um, so Joey's a big reason why we know that the bells work. If you know,
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh.
because I knew something. It sounded like something dark was going on here, as I'm sure a lot of you in the audience are feeling right now. So I was like, you know what, you should grab a
Yeah.
bell
The darkest energy
and
I've ever dealt with is the oncology ward at this particular hospital. And I read energy, so trust me, it's very dark energy. And I have never told my son what I saw when I look at the lead oncologist at this particular hospital. And one day he was getting a procedure. They had medicated him because they were going to basically take some spinal fluid off of him. And they weren't able to do the procedure because just there was a side effect that he had, so they had to stop it. But he said, "I have to tell you something, Mom. I have to tell you something." And I go, "What? Tell me." And he's like, "I can't tell you till they leave the room." So I asked them all to step out of the room. And as soon as they walked out of the room, he starts screaming at the top of his lungs, "She's evil! She's evil! She's evil!" And my son is not like this. He does not say these types of things, but he is very highly intuitive. I could get into stories that would blow your mind. And this is what he sensed from this woman. And I've sensed the exact same thing. And so my good friend Steve suggested ringing the bell, and it drove her absolutely crazy. We tried it. Just say
um,
there's a little truth to it. Not sure if she was annoyed by the bell or it really works.
I don't know. I don't know. We did, but it's nice that it did help. That I'm
Well, she
happy
has
about.
not been back in his room since that incident. Since the bell
And
ringing, she's not been back.
that's very interesting too. That's very interesting. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, Joey,
Yeah.
I want to thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
on.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
giving me a voice.
Yeah, of course. I mean, what's the least anybody could do with something
And like
like
I said,
this?
I'm pretty much gonna have to like invoke whistleblower status here because I've been kind of gag ordered to even speak about this, which is very unconstitutional.
It is, especially well, because yeah, that's because where you're at, and we've talked about this. That's my beef with Commonwealth states.
Yep.
Because I grew up in one. I grew up in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and
Hmm.
Commonwealth states think your constitutional rights are privileges. That's
Yep.
verbatim their mentality on your constitutional rights. They think they are privileges.
Hmm.
And so, I at least understand with what you, because, when I went through my legal issues in a Commonwealth state, um, all of my constitutional rights were looked at as privileges. So, I mean, and that's inhumane. Those are our natural innate rights. And Diana's
Hmm.
got one more thing to say, real quick.
Sure.
That is criminal. If you can't be honest, that's a flag for tyranny and corruption.
Yep.
Absolutely,
Yeah, I was
absolutely.
sent legal notices by both the hospital, and I was also had a judge actually put a restriction on me speaking out on this particular matter. And you know, it's like I'm not going to live my life in fear because this needs to be heard, and people need to understand that this is happening in America and how many other parents were silenced.
It's
Yeah.
I'm so happy I could have you on to tell your story. So I want to let everybody know who's watching or listening right now, and this will also be available in the replay. So if you are watching or listening to this later on, there's a link underneath Joey's links, and if you would like to help donate to her son, I have the link there. It's in both the Rumble and the YouTube description of the videos, and it will remain there after we are done being live tonight, and it will be there for the replay. So if you guys feel like you want to donate to her son to help everything that's going on, I would highly recommend that you do,
Yeah.
because as you've heard tonight, this story, I mean, I don't know how anybody could listen to this story and not have their blood boil. You
Yeah,
know
and
what I
it's
mean?
just been crazy because, like I said, I've been in and out of the hospital for 7 months now, so my ability to work is greatly compromised, obviously, with caring for a child that's hospitalized all the time and being up there so often. So yeah, if anybody feels called to help out, I'd be tremendously grateful.
I would too. All right, guys. Well, I want to thank you all so much. Joey, if you can just hang out for a couple minutes after we
All
get
right,
done.
thank
I
you.
want to thank you all for joining me tonight for this very real BG Cast Wednesday live podcast. Again, guys, this needs to be brought to light. This needs to be put on blast. This needs to be outed.
Yeah,
If anybody else out there has any similar stories that they would like to share, go ahead and reach out to me. If you would like to contact Joey herself, her Facebook is in the description of both the Rumble and the YouTube videos. And other than that, guys, I mean, I'm sure a lot of us here are at a loss for words. I know a lot of people in my audience right now are parents themselves, and I'm
hmm
sure their blood is boiling
yeah. I
also.
just hope no other. I want to make it so that like there's got to be a way that no other parent ever has to go through this type of tyranny. So hopefully I can speak with some legislators and something can get passed and something good could come out of this.
I want to do what I can to help you also. So yes, let's definitely chat about that. Other than that, guys, I will be back next week with somebody from the Order of Melchizedek. This is going to get
Mm,
very interesting. So
very
I
cool.
will. She is going to come on and give us some of her insights. If those of you who don't know what the Order of Melchizedek is, it is like a very mystic Knights Templar. So she will be coming on to kind of share some of her insights about what is happening right now in this spiritual awakening we are all experiencing here. Why is everything being so slowly drip fed? What is going on as far as what is behind the scenes right now? So she is going to come on and she is going to chat with us and kind of give us her 2 cents. So, other than that, guys, thank you for joining me tonight. If you liked what you heard, give me a like, a subscribe, a follow, and also please go over to Joey's YouTube page, give her a subscribe too. And other than that, guys, we have to stay strong. We have
Yeah.
to stay sovereign. We have to stay free. We have to stay safe. And I wish that to everybody who was here tonight with us. And other than that, I will catch you guys next Wednesday. Have a good night, everybody. Take care and divine blessed. Here we go.